Picture this. You're standing at crossroads. Maybe it's a job opportunity. Maybe it's a relationship decision. Your mind is racing through all logical pros and cons. But somewhere deep inside, there is this persistent myth that intuition is somehow a feminine trait. That's complete nonsense. Some of the most intuitive people I know are men. When I get the don't whisper and I ignore it, I always, and I mean always, regret it later. Choosing the wrong business partners when my inner voice clearly said don't. Your intuition probably speaks to you in a very different way than mine. Maybe it's a gut feeling, maybe it's a sudden knowing, maybe it's an... So what exactly is this thing we call intuition? Well, picture this. You're standing at crossroads. Maybe it's a job opportunity, maybe it's a relationship decision, or maybe it's something as simple as which route to take home. Your mind is racing through all logical pros and cons. But somewhere deep inside, there is this quiet voice, this whisper that seems to know something your thinking mind doesn't. For me, that whisper has become my trusted advisor. And sometimes I learned it the hard way, because ignoring it always comes with a price. Today, I want to share with you what I've discovered about intuition. Not the mystical, wishy-washy New Age version, but, the real, very practical inner compass that we all have, both men and women. Because here's what I know after decades of living with that whisper in my ear. It's worth listening to, really. Let me start with a story from many years ago. The very, very first time that I felt and heard that soft whisper in my ear. I was a very fierce teenager, but my parents were quite old when I came along, by accident. And I used to sneak out in the middle of the night during the weekends. I lived about 15 minutes from Central Station in Antwerp, and back in those days, walking in the middle of Antwerp city was quite safe, especially in that area. One night, I met this handsome guy from Liverpool with the most beautiful, incredible blue eyes. Oh, what a night. No, not what you're thinking. Mind you, I was a very young girl and I was a very good girl, besides sneaking out in the middle of the night. We fooled around a little bit in a very newly built underground parking garage in the center of Antwerp. He was leaving the next day, but I gave him my phone number. Our home phone number. Remember, no smartphones, no internet, no social media, just a phone. Now, walking back home that night, I felt it clearly for the very first time. This tingling sensation in the back of my neck, and there it was, the whisper. Very gentle, very quietly, but very unmistakable. Don't lose this guy. He's the one. But of course, my father went practically crazy when I told him. And after a couple of weeks, the guy returned and called me up. And of course, I was forced to let him go. Now, after a few hours, my father realized that he was sort of making a mistake. He sort of felt it, that I was really, really very serious about this guy, even at my very young life. Anyway, my father proposed, let's go in the city, go to the places where you've been with him or where you've met him, and just go and look. You never know. Back in those days, I didn't think he was sweet at all. Actually, I hated him at that moment, of course. But looking back on it, I think it was quite sweet to have a father to be able to admit that he was wrong. Anyway, together we searched the city, but no luck. That whisper stayed with me for weeks. But today, we're 45 years later, and I still wonder what happened to him. How is he? Is he still alive? Is he married? Kids? Divorced? Anyway, back to the story. Then I met my very first real boyfriend at a dancing school. You know, the ones where you learn the quick step and the cha-cha-cha. Well, initially it wasn't very serious, but after our first kiss, when I was walking out of that dancing school, there was this whisper again. But this time it wasn't with the tingling feeling in the back of my neck. It was clearly saying to me, don't. And when I was walking out and I felt it and I heard it, I must admit it was odd. It was very strange. It felt strange too. You know, and also that voice stayed with me for quite a while. Not as long, not as in weeks or months, but it was there. I also felt that, don't mess this up. You will regret it. But look, I was a young girl, I didn't listen, and over months the whisper just faded. Eventually, we married, and of course, it was a huge mistake. But when you're young and your parents aren't really available for guidance, you lack advice. And back then, this was a topic, this was something you openly just didn't talk about. And of course, it didn't work out. So I left him some years later. That whisper is different for everyone. Here's something very fascinating about intuition. It doesn't speak the same to everyone, and for some it's literally a whisper. For others it can be a physical sensation, like the tinkling in the back of your neck that I get often. And other people get goosebumps all over on their arms, or the tightness in your stomach or in your chest. And many refer to it as a gut feeling. Researchers have found that the enteric nervous system in our gut contains around 100 million neurons. So it's really enough to explain why our gut feelings often align so powerfully with our intuitive instincts. It's crucial to learn how to recognize and trust your unique version of this intuitive whisper. Equally important is understanding the clear distinction between intuitive insights and cognitive, rational thinking. Intuition often appears instantly, quietly, and without elaborate justification. In contrast, cognitive thoughts tend to be loud, analytical, and filled with logical reasoning, often causing indecision through overthinking. Learning to differentiate these two distinct inner experiences can significantly influence the quality of your choices and overall life satisfaction. Over the years, I've made some pretty bad decisions, choosing the wrong business partners when my inner voice clearly said don't, speaking up when my whisper said shut up. And I still tend to do that sometimes. Yeah, well, I'm human. Once I hired someone and my whisper wasn't really whispering anymore. It came to a point that it more or less was very loud, like a shout out, without shouting. Very hard to explain. But boy, that came with a huge price tag. That woman really ripped me off. Costed me a lot of money and a lot of headaches. But I really felt sorry for her, and I wanted to help her to get back on her feet. She had a little girl, and I was even more worried about her. But that story is for another podcast. That story is a whole podcast on its own. For my intimate relationships, I didn't have much of warnings anymore. I've been in and out of relationships a couple of times. And one time it was really a very long one. And one day we just grew apart and decided to split. That was 15 years ago, and we're still besties today. A couple of days ago, we went to the movies. Do we have still arguments? Absolutely. Yeah. But these relationships I consider lessons in life. We need those to be able to grow up and evolve, to become more mature in life. And with maturity comes inner peace. But you know, that inner whisper also tells me that the one is still around. The soulmate, as we say it. We will see, won't we? And maybe I will never meet him in this life. But one thing I do know, after being very happily single for many years, I will only commit again when my heart and my mind agrees. And my soft whisper says, he's the one. One of the last really terrible decisions I made going against my whisper, saying don't, was buying a second-hand car. When I went to go and look at the car and the salesman opened the hood of the motor, there it was again. I looked at the motor and the voice, the little voice said, don't do this. You're gonna regret it. And of course, I did it anyway. That car, I loved that car. I had it less than a year, and half the time it was in the garage to fix it. This is what I mean when I talk about intuition. It's not about crystal balls and supernatural powers. It's about that incredible processing system we all have running in the background, picking up on subtle cues, patterns, and information that our conscious mind hasn't quite caught up yet. For me, this inner guidance has three very distinctive voices. Yes, go for it. Don't, wait, and I don't know. That's when it's silent. That's my mind still thinking about it. And I have learned that each one deserves respect. When I get the don't whisper and I ignore it, I always, and I mean always, regret it later. When I get the go for it whisper and I don't act on it, I regret that too. But here's what it took me years to understand. When I get the I don't know whisper, that's not indecision. That's wisdom telling me that the timing isn't right. So what exactly is this thing we call intuition? Well, scientists describe it as our unconscious mind's ability to rapidly process complex information and deliver insights without showing how it works. It's like having a supercomputer running in the background, analyzing everything from body language to environmental cues, the patterns we've learned over our lifetime, and then suddenly presenting us with a conclusion. But intuition is more than just cognitive processing. It's the beautiful integration of our thinking mind and our emotional intelligence and our body's wisdom. Our bodies often know things before our minds even figure them out. You know, that knot you get in your stomach when something feels off, the warmth in your chest, you know you're on the right path. The way your energy shifts when you're around certain people. The problem is we live in a world that loves rational thoughts and treats feelings as somehow less reliable. We've been trained to analyze, justify, and prove everything. Meanwhile, that quiet voice that actually knows what's best for us gets sort of drowned in all the noise around us. Think about it. How often do you make a decision based purely on how it feels? How often do you trust that first instinct before your mind starts creating elaborate justifications for why we should or shouldn't do something? Most of us have been taught to distrust our inner knowing. But what if I told you that the most successful people in the world, entrepreneurs, athletes, leaders, all have one thing in common? They've learned to listen to that whisper. Here's what's fascinating. We all have intuition, but we experience it in a completely different way. For me, it's literally like a whisper in my ear, a quiet voice that speaks in very simple terms. But I've talked to enough people over the years to know that's just one way that this inner wisdom voice turns up. Some people feel it in their gut, literally. They get this physical sensation in their stomach that either draws them towards something or warns them away. Others experience it as a sudden clarity, like a fog lifting, and suddenly they know what they need to do. I know people who feel energy shifts. They walk into a room and immediately they sense whether it's safe or it's hostile, whether someone is being genuine or putting on an act. Some even get really physical reactions like goosebumps and hair standing up, their heart rate literally changing. And others see images or get flashes of insights about what's coming next. My father had that, and not even a little. He predicted literally disasters, either storms or lightning and fire. He saved me and my mom once from a fire in our home. He even helped a church when the top blew off during a massive storm. He predicted that. It was very creepy for me. I was still a very young child, and to be honest, it scared the hell out of me. The point is, there is no wrong way to experience intuition. What matters is learning to recognize how your inner wisdom speaks to you specifically. Because once you cracked that code, once you understand your own intuitive language, you've got access to a guidance system that's been with you your whole life. But before we go any further, let's address the elephant in the room. There is this persistent myth that intuition is somehow a feminine trait, that it's all about emotions and feelings, and therefore more natural for women than men. Let me tell you something. That's complete nonsense. I mean, look at the story of my father. Some of the most intuitive people I know are men. They just might call it different. They might call it reading the room. Heard that before? Or going with their gut feeling. Or following their instinct. But it's the same thing. Think about successful male entrepreneurs who can sense which investment that will pay off. Athletes who know exactly when to make their move. Negotiators who feel when someone is bluffing. It's all intuition at work. The difference isn't that men don't have any intuition. It's our culture that taught them how to frame it differently, to make it sound more logical and strategic. But underneath all those fancy business terms, it's the same whisper we all are capable of hearing. The most effective leaders, regardless of their gender, are the ones who learned to balance rational analysis with intuitive wisdom. They use both of their thinking mind and their feeling sense to navigate complex situations. Here's what I've noticed about the don't whisper. It's usually very quiet, but persistent. It doesn't scream or create drama. It just sits there, calmly disagreeing. And the more you try to rationalize your way around it, the stronger it gets. The don't whisper has saved me many times from bad relationships, terrible business deals, and countless smaller mistakes. But here's the thing, only when I listen to it. Every time I've overridden it with logic, I've paid the price. Just as powerful is that gentle encouragement that says, yes, this is right. Even when all the logical arguments seem to point in another direction. These are often the moments that lead to our greatest growth and our most meaningful experiences. The go for it whisper tends to be softer than fear, the gremlin on your shoulder. But it's more persistent. It's that calm knowing that says, this is yours to do. The regret you get of not following the yes whisper is different from ignoring a don't whisper, but just as real. It's the regret of wondering what if. It's the sadness of knowing you let fear override your wisdom. What I've learned is that the go for it whisper often comes with a lot of opportunities that won't wait. These are moments when life is offering you the chance to step into something bigger, something more aligned with who you are becoming. But if you hesitate too long, if you get stuck in analysis paralysis, that moment passes. I had this idea for this podcast around 4 years in my head. And all of a sudden, the opportunity was there. My intuition was all over it. Go for it, go for it, go for it. Imagine sitting in a room full with people, and there it is, the door opening to this podcast, where I'm able to share my 30 years of ups and downs and all the lessons I have learned, and all the lessons I still need to learn. 30 years of wisdom began with a whisper saying, go for it, the time is right. And since then, it's like every door opens without even to push it. Now, I must admit that I've never felt this much aligned than this past year. And now we have the wisdom of I don't know. The I don't know whisper took me the longest time to figure it out or to even understand. You know, for years I couldn't get a clear read on situations when my intuition seemed to go silent or was unclear. I really thought something was wrong. I thought I should be able to sense the right answer immediately. When your intuition tells you, I don't know, it's actually telling you one or two things. Either you don't have enough information yet, or the timing isn't right. It's your inner wisdom saying, hold on, wait a second, let's develop this a little bit more. Learning to respect the I don't know whisper has saved me from many premature decisions and rushing into situations before I was ready. It's taught me the power of patience and the wisdom of waiting for clarity rather forcing it. You know what I've also discovered is that there is one thing that really can completely cut us off from our own intuition wisdom. You know, when our ego takes control, we stop listening to that gentle voice because we're too busy trying to win, to be right, to prove how smart or strong we are. The ego doesn't care about feelings. The ego doesn't care about if it feels right. It only cares about coming out on top. And you can see this play out everywhere. Watch two people having an argument where neither is actually really listening to one another. There is no communication with each other. There's communication at each other. Each person is just waiting their turn to prove their point. That's ego-driven communication. And that's the enemy of real understanding. I notice this in myself sometimes. I'll be in a conversation and suddenly I realize I'm not actually listening anymore. I'm not trying to understand or connect. I'm trying to win. And in that moment, I have lost touch with my intuitive wisdom completely. When the ego is driving, we become deaf to whispers. We can't hear what the other person is really saying because we're too busy defending our own position. We can't sense what the situation actually needs because we're too focused on what we actually want to get out of it. The ego shouts. Intuition whispers. The ego sees competition everywhere. Intuition sees opportunities for connections and understanding. The ego wants to be right. Intuition wants to find the truth. Learning to recognize when my ego has taken over has become crucial for getting back in touch with my inner voice. Because when I can step back from the need to win and ask myself, what does my intuition say about this situation? Everything shifts. And this brings me to why I think developing our intuition awareness is so important in our lives. It's the path to inner peace. When you learn to recognize and trust your inner voice, when you can distinguish between the wisdom in your intuition and the noise of your ego, you gain access to a kind of calm, incredible confidence that can't be taken by external circumstances. You stop literally second guessing yourself constantly because you have a reliable internal guidance system. You stop getting caught up in unnecessary drama because you can sense what's worth your energy and what isn't. This inner peace doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It means you're navigating life challenges from a completely different place. A place of trust rather than anxiety, connection rather than separation, and wisdom rather than reactivity. People can feel this shift within you. You're operating from a centered place when you're listening to your inner wisdom rather than your ego. You show up differently in the world. You're more present, more authentic, more able to truly connect with others. And that creates a ripple effect. It works like this. Your calm confidence gives others permission to access their own wisdom. Your own authentic presence invites more authentic connections. Your trust in your own guidance inspires others to trust theirs. So how do you develop this relationship with your own intuition? How do you learn to hear and trust that whisper? Well, first you need to create a space for it. Intuition needs quiet to be heard. Find moments of stillness. Walking in nature, wherever you live, go to a park, it really doesn't matter. Or just sitting quietly with your morning coffee and enjoying it without reaching out for your phone. For me, those are my dogs. They are the center of my universe and my inner compass of my inner peace. Because when I'm out of balance, I see it through their behavior and I know I need to align with myself again. Start small. Don't try to use your intuition for life-changing decisions if you're not used to it. Practice with things that are low stake, like which route to take to your work, or better yet, which friend should you be calling today. Begin to notice what your inner guidance feels like when you're not under pressure. Pay attention to your body. Your body often knows things way before your mind catches up. Your body is constantly giving you information. You just need to learn its language. The more you pay attention to these patterns, because they are patterns, the more you will learn to trust your inner knowing. And finally, learn to distinguish between fear and intuition, because it's really a very big difference. Fear is usually loud and urgent and catastrophic. Intuition tends to be calm and clear, even when it's pointing you to something very challenging. Here's what I want you to remember about that whisper, that inner knowing, that gentle guidance. It's really not some mystical ability that only certain people have. It's your birthright. And don't you forget that, ever. It's a natural part of being human that you can develop and trust. Personally, for me, learning to listen to that whisper in my ear has been really one of the most valuable skills I've ever developed. It's guided me through difficult decisions, protected me from very costly mistakes. And oh, by the way, I really did make some very costly mistakes when I didn't listen, and led me toward opportunities I would have never found through just logic alone. Your intuition probably speaks to you in a very different way than mine. Maybe it's a gut feeling. Maybe it's a sudden knowing. Maybe it's an energy shift you feel in your body. The form doesn't matter. What matters is that you learn to recognize it, respect it, and trust it. Because when you do, when you learn to navigate life with both thinking mind and feeling sense, when you can hear the whisper beneath all the noise, you gain access to wisdom that will serve you for the rest of your life. So listen, trust it, follow the whisper. It knows things your mind hasn't figured out yet. And until our next podcast, remember, your inner voice deserves to be heard.